Hi guys, XYZ, and for this installment of The Good and the Bad, I decided to go for a game that's more recent and also at the same time more infamous, and that is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. As you can see in the background too, I have a poster, but it was developed by Robomoto and published by Activision, and is essentially the fifth installment of the Pro Skater series after a 13-year gap from the last one. And honestly, it was kind of on a disappointing note, for most fans of the Tony Hawk franchise. So let's see what's good and what's bad about it. Well, for the good, yeah, there aren't many good points for this game, but if I had to go for something, uh, well, I guess I can say the control scheme is roughly the same. So if you ever played a Tony Hawk game in the past, it's pretty familiar. You know, I mean, all the moves and stuff like that is roughly the same. Um, but I guess really the only good thing I really did like though was the updated special meter. In previous tournament games, when you have your special meter, whenever you get enough tricks and your meter goes up, it automatically activates. So at that point, you have to start doing special type moves. Otherwise, then you lose the opportunity and you have to build it up again. But for this game, they do have it where you can actually store the special in your special meter and activate it at any time. So I do like that. So it's not like you have to go with the special meter. You actually can trigger whenever you want. Maybe build up a longer combo near the end or whatever. Well, for the bad, there are probably like 100 good reasons why this game is bad, but I guess the ones I focus on more would be the slam maneuver that's added to the grinding, and I guess on paper it made sense, to help you continue combos and allow you to snap on the rails more easily, but in the actual execution, it's a totally different story. It's like half the time it works and half the time it doesn't, and it's kind of frustrating when your combo gets stopped abruptly because the grinding all seems to fail. And luckily they did updated this by having the ability to double tap on the grind, so now you can choose whether or not to use the slam, which I do highly recommend. But it's just the fact that when they first released the game like that, and the whole state of having the grinding and slamming being the same button, it just wasn't thought out well enough. I guess second would be the whole level and mission structure. Uh, I mean, the fact that the levels themselves are pretty small to begin with, like almost all the levels are just extremely small compared to like previous tournament games. And I guess the missions themselves, I mean, they're a little bit on the easy side, but the problem is they're really repetitive. They kind of get stale after like the first couple of levels, and it's almost like you're just repeating the same things over and over. And not real much variety there. Well, another issue is the whole creation stuff, like the Create a Park and the Create a Skater. With the Create a Park, it feels a little bit on the, I guess, half complete, limited side. I mean, for one thing, you have to choose an existing level for the basis of your level, and some of the stuff is kind of limited, which you can really incorporate in the level. And really, it kind of seems to you know fall outside the range of reality. As I've seen levels where you have rails that just seem to connect in the air, which doesn't really seem to make much sense. Uh, and then there's the whole creative skater, which honestly is not much of a creative skater. It's more like just choosing a different head, body, and deck for the current skater that you have. It doesn't have the full out, fully customizable character that you can create in previous games. And then there's the whole issue with online. With online, it felt more like an afterthought than anything else, and I guess the main problem for that is because you're most likely going to be seeing players on the first level than any other level, because you have to complete missions in one level to progress to the next level, and really, how many people are going to be going through the entire game itself just to get to like the last level so you can meet up with other players? And that's not as likely, at least in my experience. So you're most likely just going to be meeting people on your first level, and not even that much either. I'd say roughly 5 or 6 at a time. Well, for improvements, there are a lot of things that could have made this game a lot better, but really, in my opinion, I say what it would have worked out greatly was if they had just pretty much copied what they did for Pro Skater 4. I know it sounds crazy, but it worked the first time, and it's Pro Skater 4 is like one of the best games for the franchise. So honestly, it wouldn't have been that hard to do the same thing a second time. Just give us bigger missions, bigger levels, better missions. Maybe actually throw in some narration every now and then because it just feels so lifeless just skating around with the characters that we have. I mean, honestly, I might as well just be skating around with a crash test dummy. Uh, I say also give us more variety for the creative skater and the creative park. Give us more stuff to do in the creative park. Allow us to actually do the same thing like we could in the old days. And as for the creative skater, have actual full you know stuff that we can actually customize. Like the hair, the body, the clothing, the decks themselves. Maybe even the voices. That would have been nice. And I say for the online issue, maybe at the very least they could have all the levels unlocked from the beginning. Instead of having to progress from each level, just give us all the levels. That way, give us more variety to have players in other levels. Allow us to play with our friends and whatnot. Well, overall, I say Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5 is a pretty disappointing game. It's hard for me to admit that, but it's just how it is. You know, I mean, it's pretty sad that this was one of the last games that Activision made for the Tony Hawk franchise. I mean, it was obviously just a giant cash grab before they lose their Tony Hawk license. It's just kind of a shame to see the game go down in flames like that. Being branded as like one of the worst games for 2015. And I don't know. I'm hoping whoever picks up the license next will actually do a way better job, and who knows, maybe they can actually redeem this franchise itself. But as of right now, if you really want to play this game, I'd say maybe rent it at most, or get yourself a really cheap copy online. As of right now, though, my final score for Pro Skater 5 would be, I guess, a 5 out of 10. I mean, it's really just a straight up average game. It's like it's just there more or less. It just doesn't have the excitement as the previous games, and it's pretty lackluster at best. And since it's just more or less a half completed game, that's really how it felt. Well, this is Double Hunter XYZ, and until next time.